Hi everyone, this is Grace of gbmaltese, and I'm going to do a work on my diamond painting. And while I'm working on this, I'm going to tell you a true crime story. So this is kind of a whip and a murder. I am working on my church in the forest, and I'm going to do a review of this when it is finished. It's so easy to work on. I did get this from Captured by Radiance, and I will put a link to their shop down below. I will try to remember to do that. Anyway, this story involves murder, and it involves the murder of a child. So if that is disturbing to you, you might not want to listen. It happened in 1974, and I was very young when this happened, but I still remember events that took place and how it affected Halloween for us kids who used to go trick-or-treating. Very shocking story. Anyway, this was October 31st of 1974. And our main character, I guess you might say, who committed the crime is Ronald Clark O'Brien. He was born on October 19th of 1944. It doesn't say what year he got married, but he was married to a woman named Daneen. He had, during this period of 1974, he had a son named Timothy, who was born in 1966, and he had a daughter, Elizabeth, who was born in 1969. So they were very young, and this was Halloween night, and kids get excited about going trick-or-treating and putting on their costumes and just going out and having a little bit of fun. Some go to parties and all this. It is good to know that this night it had been raining, so they did not get to trick-or-treat for more than a couple of blocks. Now, a little background information on O'Brien. I'll be calling him O'Brien a lot of the times, or Ronald. But anyway, O'Brien was an optician, and he worked for TSO, which is Texas State Optical. They lived, as I said, in Deer Park, Texas. He worked at this time in Sharpstown, which is close to the Houston area. In 10 years, he had 21 different jobs. From the sound of that, doesn't sound like he was a very good employee. And we'll find out a little bit of why he was losing the job he was at the time that this happened. He also belonged and was a deacon at Second Baptist Church in Houston, which is a huge church. I have seen it, and it's big. He sang in the choir, and he also ran the bus ministry, or the buses would go pick people up and bring them to church. So he was in charge of that. So everyone thought of him as a really good man. He was helpful. He did all sorts of things in the church. So this is not something what happens is not something you would think he would be even capable of doing. So they went to Pasadena, Texas to go trick-or-treating. He took his 2 kids, and he went along with a neighbor and his 2 kids. So they went trick-or-treating, like I said, a couple of blocks, because it started raining a little bit, and they didn't want to stay out and get wet. They went from house to house, just, how kids do. They get excited and go from one house to the other. They stopped at one house, and the lights were turned out, but they went ahead and did their trick or treat, and nobody answered. So the kids were excited and they went on ahead, and the neighbor went on. O'Brien stayed back, and just a couple of minutes later, he came running up and he said there was somebody at home, and he held out these 5 huge pixie sticks. Now, if you don't know what pixie sticks are, a pixie sticks it contains is mostly colored sugar, is what I would call it. It's comes in different colors and it's just sugar. He got the 21-inch size. They were giving out the huge pixie sticks. They come in plastic. I remember them still. I never was a big fan of pixie sticks. They're kind of a sweet, sour taste. I'm not sure what all is in it, mostly sugar. So the kids were excited. They got these huge sticks. We're talking almost 2 feet long. And they went on trick-or-treating until they decided it was time to go on home. It's getting more rain, so they decided they need to get on in. O'Brien had gotten 5 pixie sticks, so as I said, he gave each of his children one. He gave the neighbor's kids one, and then he saw another child who was, I think, 10 years old that he knew from church. So he gave him one of the pixie sticks, and they were all excited, and they went on home. When they got home, it was getting close to bedtime, and O'Brien told the kids, I'll let you choose one kind of candy to eat before you go to bed. Well, Timothy picked out the pixie sticks, and he was having trouble opening because those things they were stapled at the end where you open it. They're very difficult to get open. So his dad helped him open it, and you just pour it into your mouth because it's a powdery substance. So he poured it into his mouth, and he told his dad, this is bitter. So his dad gave him some Kool-Aid to drink to wash it down, so to get that taste out. Just a very few minutes after he had eaten his pixie stick, he complained of violent stomach cramps. And he went to the bathroom and was throwing up. He started convulsing, and by the time O'Brien got to him, he was limp in his arms. So he was not responsive. They did call for an ambulance. The ambulance came, and by the time he got to the hospital, he was already dead, sadly. Just tragic. Remember poor Timothy. I just, poor little thing. Just tragic way to go. But to me, the real star would be Timothy in this. He's the one who lost his life due to some greediness that we'll find out about. So, kind of give a thought to Timothy. Rest in peace, sweet child. Just unbelievable. Anyway, of course, this was announced to the TVs, the police, and things. It was all getting out. Parents were terrified. They were all scared to death that all the candy that the kids had been given out might have been poisoned. So they were taking it into the police to get it checked. The police were interested in the pixie sticks. So they got Elizabeth, that was the sister. They got her pixie stick. They also got the 2 pixie sticks back from the neighbor. And the parents of that 5th child, the one that that O'Brien had given it to, they couldn't find it. They finally went upstairs to see if it was upstairs, maybe in his trick-or-treat bag, and they found it in the little boy's hand. He had not been able to open it. It was so hard to open, he couldn't open it. Thank God. So he was asleep with it in his hands. So they took all of that to the police station. And when the police checked, the top, let's say about 2 inches of the pixie stick was cyanide. It had been tampered with. Someone had poured out part of the pixie stick and replaced that with cyanide. No other candies had been tampered with at that point in time. No one else. No one. Just these 5 pixie sticks. Everyone else was okay. Parents were panicking, and it was horrible. But those were the ones. And they said in the pixie stick that Timothy had eaten, there was enough cyanide to kill 2 grown-ups. In the other pixie sticks, there was enough to kill 3 to 4 adults. So we're talking massive quantities of cyanide. Now, they started questioning O'Brien, and he told them, I got these pixie sticks from this house. And they said, well, can you show us where the house was? And he said, well, we went out there. They took him on out there. And remember, they only went 2 blocks. So there weren't that many houses for him to try to remember. He kept saying, I can't remember. It was this one or this one. He finally said, oh, it was his house. I remember now. It was this house. Well, they stopped and they talked to the man, because he did tell them, he said, I remember when the door opened, only thing I saw was a hand. And I noticed that the arm was hairy. So they knew it had to have been a man. I don't think there would be any other choice unless, they were wearing some kind of a costume. But he said basically it was a man. So they went and talked to the man who lived in that house. And he said, I wasn't even home on Halloween night. I was at work. He's an air traffic controller. There were 200 other people who testified and said, yeah, he was at work. So O'Brien's story is starting to get a little bit fishy at this point. So they start doing a little checking up on O'Brien. And some things they found out was that he was in debt for $100,000. He, which in today's era, that would be about $520,000. So he didn't have money to pay any of that back. He didn't have any money. They also found out that he was being looked into at the TSO he was working at because he'd been stealing money from them. Now, the most suspicious, well, also his car was about to be repossessed and his house was in foreclosure. So he was in very bad financial straits. But the most suspicious thing that I think, was that in January of 1974, he had taken out 2 life insurance policies. One on Timothy for $10,000 and one on Elizabeth for $10,000. So he took them out on his kids, not on himself, or just weird. 1 month before the murder happened, he upped those policies $20,000 more for each one. So each of those policies was now worth $30,000. The $10,000 policy in this day and age would have been worth $52,476. So you can multiply that 3 times, and we're talking, over $150,000 for each child. So, the police are investigating all these different things. And one thing that is very troublesome is the very next morning after Timothy had died, O'Brien called the insurance company to see when he could get his money for his son's death. He wanted to see, when can I collect my money? Wow, what a jerk. We're talking a complete and total a-hole in my eyes. I cannot even imagine in my wildest dreams someone doing something like this. Not just doing it, but then to call the next day? Doesn't even mourn for that little boy. It just makes me sick. I tell you what, if that'd been my husband, his wife did say she did not know anything about the life insurance policies during the trial that they have. So she had no idea. She didn't know he'd been calling, but gosh, can you imagine what she might have done if she did know? I might have been going to prison instead, but I don't know. And also, in the year preceding this death, he had been asking people about cyanide. He had been asking where one could purchase it, and he was asking people, how much would it take to kill someone? Those are really strange topics of conversation. Can you imagine your friend saying, by the way, do you know how much cyanide it would take to kill a man? We got red flags going up all over, but people didn't think anything about that. Why would you think he is thinking about killing someone? He just said, I was just wondering, just thinking about it. He just kind of laughed it off. He didn't, of course, didn't say what he was going to do with it, but he was checking where he could find it and all this kind of stuff. He checked at one place to buy the cyanide, and they only sold it in 5-pound tubs or whatever, packages. And he didn't need that much. They never said where he finally did purchase the cyanide. That is one thing nobody knows. Where he got it, how he got it. But he did. Then they said, I guess the police are still investigating at this time, because at the funeral, he was talking to his couple of family members about what he was going to do with the money from the insurance policy. He was talking about taking a vacation and different things that he wanted to buy. Red flags coming up. I would be for sure reporting this to the police, and I'm sure they did. So they did, of course, take him in to custody, and they had a trial. In this trial, they found out all of these different things that I've been telling you about. His wife said that Timothy did not actually pick out that pixie stick as his first choice. His dad did. He told him, I can just hear him, oh, this is a big one. This one's really special. Let's have this one. And fed his child that cyanide-laced sugar. What? Oh, gosh, I just don't know how he lived with himself. So they had the trial. Then on June 3rd of 1975, the jury took 46 minutes to find O'Brien guilty of murder and 4 attempted murders. They even charged him for the other 4 pixie sticks. Then the next thing they had to decide was his sentencing, and this took them only 71 minutes. and they decided he was to be put to death by the electric chair. At that time in Texas, the electric chair was the mode of death in the prisons. So, he's sent to prison. He was imprisoned in Huntsville, Texas, and that's actually the city where I went to college. So, part of the time I was in college, he was there in prison. I didn't remember that part at that time. I didn't know, I was in college doing my thing. And there are several prisons in Huntsville. So, of course, he was in Ellis Unit. That's where they had death row. And as a side note, we now have a prison in the town I live in, and there is death row in our prison. It's really sad. Things have to be that way. Anyway, he kept wanting a new trial, kept getting put off. He kept saying he was innocent. He would not admit guilt, ever. He always said he was innocent. Now, it's pretty bad when you are in prison, and even the prisoners hate you. They despised him. They would have nothing to do with him. He was left to himself. And I have heard from many people that prisoners have a code of ethics in a way. If someone harms or kills a child or an older person, and many times a woman, they have nothing. They hate them. They despise them. And sometimes they can end up dead. But he was not killed by the prisoners. He finally, after almost 10 years of saying, I want to appeal this, blah, 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 he was going to have to face his death penalty. During the time he was in prison, they did away with the electric chair and went to the lethal injection. So, on March 31st of 1984, he was put to death by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. They said that there were people outside cheering and throwing candy because he had done so much harm, and it was a very widely publicized case. I remember how parents even now, people are afraid to let their kids trick or treat in places they don't know where they're going because of that incident. I did a little research, and they did say that there has been no incidents of a child being poisoned or having a razor blade in their apples or candies, because we used to hear that when we were kids, that people would put pins and razor blades in the candy, and you'd take a bite into it and it would go into your mouth. But they said that has never been reported of any instances that way. But it did change the way kids trick-or-treated, for the most part, all over. People, I still remember how terrified people were. It was scary. You were scared. Even when my daughter was little, I remembered all about all that. And I only took her to places of people I knew. I didn't know as much about the story as I do now. But, it's a crazy world out there. And it's scary to think of what someone can do. But he did this to his own child. And that's normally what happens. Normally, they are out to kill someone that they know. It's just such a sad, sad story. It just makes me sick. But before he was executed, he said that he thought that the death penalty was a cruel and unusual punishment. Wonder what he thought about what he did to his own son. Boy, I just do not understand what a mean, hateful person this was. He has to be psycho to have no emotions at all towards his own child. While he was in prison, his wife did divorce him, and at some point she remarried, and the man she married adopted her daughter, Elizabeth. So she will be able to call another man her dad and not this monster. Timothy is still remembered to this day for what happened. There are so many people that out there that their names need to be remembered for the horrible crimes that they were subjected to. So just be safe out there, guys. Halloween is here. If you have kids, grandkids, or whatever, be careful. Every day of the week, of the year, just be careful out there. Tell your loved ones you love them every day. And if you hear someone asking crazy questions, you might want to check into it, because a lot of times people hear these kinds of things and don't think anything about it. I mean, that's just weird. Just weird. Anyway, I know this was kind of a downer story, but it made such an impact on me when I was a kid and when I saw it. In fact, they named this guy the Candyman. That you'll see that if you check into the Candyman. They that was his name that they gave him during the trial. They came up with the Candyman. I have some better names, and it has nothing to do with being the Candyman. I don't. I'm sorry, but no. Anyway, you take care of yourselves, guys. I do love you, and I hope that you will take care of yourselves. Be safe. God bless you, and I will talk to you another day. Take care. Love ya. Bye.